Old Hotel continues next Thursday at 9. Now, though, expect some strong language and a sideways glance at the week's news.
Good evening and welcome to Have I Got News For You? I'm David Tennant. It's week 7 of lockdown. The show's been moved from Friday to Thursday. Nothing to do with VE Day, it's just the BBC scheduler doesn't know what day of the week it is anymore. Ian, last week, no offence, but you were rather upstaged by Colin the cat.
Yes, and I've spent most of the last week acting as his agent, so I'm sorry he can't be here tonight. He's had a lot of better offers. He's on Gogglebox and Gardener's World, and I think Eamon Holmes has invited him on, so sorry.
Paul, will we have any surprise guests emerging from behind your much-talked-about curtains tonight?
Yes, yes, quite possibly. I can't believe that these curtains have become some kind of Twitter thing. I mean, they're curtains.
It's a tribute to your performance, Paul.
That people notice the curtains. Why doesn't he get out of the way so we can see more of the curtains?
On Ian's team is Evening Standard columnist and writer Ayesha Hazarika. Ayesha, you've said how isolation is getting to you now, that you're chatting to your kettle and your pot plants. Is that true?
Yeah, and I'm at the stage where they're starting to talk back to me, and just discovered that the kettle is a lever, which is a bit of a problem, but what are you going to do?
On Paul's team tonight is comedian Chris McCausland. Chris, you're a massive fan of Liverpool Football Club, so look forward to the moment this evening when your team has an unassailable lead and the Zoom link suddenly crashes.
It's heartbreaking. Don't joke about it, please, David. It makes me feel like such a horrible person for caring so much under the circumstances, but 6 points is all we need, please.
In the news this week, with talk of lockdown easing, some people are back in training for the morning commute.
This train terminates at West Hampstead.
You can tell that footage is fake. There's someone reading The Economist.
It's likely there'll be some government advice about the wearing of face masks. Would you like to see how the Belgian Minister for Face Masks got on when he visited a face mask factory?
Absolutely.
Let's have a look at this incredibly awkward moment.
En dan is het kwestie van je mondmasker nog goed aan te doen.
Chris, I'm sorry you didn't see that, but trust me, you could teach him a thing or two about how to put a face mask on.
For the people at home, by the way, I've had a lot of these videos just before we filmed. I had them described to me, so I've already done me laughing.
Right.
I'd also like to say as well, I'm very aware that I might not, because I can't see the camera, I've got this little earpiece in, my gaze might kind of drift. And if it makes anyone feel awkward at home, just move to your left a bit.
Typical BBC advice. Always trying to smuggle in the agenda. I can spot it.
Right, let's get on with the show. And we start with the bigger stories of the week. Ian and Ayesha, take a look at this.
This is back to work, possibly.
This is how do we do our social distancing. This woman's come up with a very innovative idea.
There's Matt Hancock yet again announcing a new app. I think this is the app that's going to bring us in line with other countries, and there's the Isle of Wight, where they're going to do it. And there's a model, not of the type that Professor Ferguson gives us, but just a model. I think that might be the clue.
So, Ian, what is the new development here?
Well, I think the new development is that we're going to have a technological solution, which lots of other countries have been doing for quite a long time already, which is a contact tracing app. which is going to help identify if you've come anywhere near someone else who's got it, and then it'll alert you and tell you. Lots of other people have been doing this from the start. It's part of the testing process that we've been a bit slow, to put it mildly, to get going. But we're going. And people are a bit worried about privacy issues. They think, oh no, the government's going to know everything about me. And the alternative is that you give it to Google and the other giants who've been so good over the years about protecting your privacy. It's essentially, who do you trust least? This government or the tech giants? It's a tough one, but I think we're going to get there.
I'm not really fussed about privacy, to be honest. I think we should upload everything about everybody into this app, keep it running, and then it can help us avoid things like people with clipboards when we're out shopping. It can, if we're about to get into a conversation with somebody who takes ages to tell a story, it can give us a warning. Loads of potential.
People are giving a huge amount of data about their neighbours to the police at the moment anyway. So I think you might as well give them your own story. You might get it right.
Yeah, although, it's only getting trialled. And in terms of the privacy issues, I have a deep anxiety about how effective this is going to be. And I do also really pity the young people of the Isle of Wight. They are going to literally have to spend 5 days, teaching their grandparents how to download this app and see if they can get it to work.
There's probably quite a lot of them that think that one of the new symptoms of coronavirus is that you get a Bluetooth.
and Ian, I've got a question for you here. With this app, what happens if you don't have a mobile phone? Does it work with an abacus?
Apparently not.
No.
It does require a modicum of technology.
Ayesha, as you pointed out, this is being trialled on the Isle of Wight. As Matt Hancock said, where the Isle of Wight leads, the rest of Britain will follow. Back to 1955. It is actually rather lovely, the Isle of Wight. There's a beautiful model village, which you saw in the clip. And if you do want to visit it, it's just past the Donkey Sanctuary before you get to Monkey Haven. What about Matt Hancock? Here he is rounding off his Isle of Wight presentation with his usual clear set of instructions.
But it is absolutely true that the social distancing measures are the thing that is doing having the big impact. And so hence the message remains: stay at home to protect the NHS and save lives, unless you're in the Isle of Wight. But even in the Isle of Wight, you should still stay at home to protect the NHS and save lives. It's that you should also install the app, because that will help this to be yet more effective.
So snappy.
He's had another problem with the over 70s, hasn't he? Because they're not quite sure whether they should stay at home forever or come out again or stay there for 3 months or never work again. It wasn't entirely clear, that message either, was it?
No, didn't he say, I never said over 70s should stay at home, and then posted his initial advice, which said over 70s should all stay at home, irrespective of underlying health conditions.
Look, let's be honest, the major headache that the Prime Minister's going to have is keeping his dad away from the pub. That is going to be the main thing.
Keep him away from a broadcasting studio, that'd do. Complete lockdown on Johnson's. It sounds draconian, it sounds like it's a liberty issue, but it isn't. It's for all of our good.
It sounds a bit dirty, to be honest, Ian. A bit risque.
Matt Hancock now seems increasingly irritable. Did you see how he responded to Labour MP Dr Rosina Allen-Khan, who is also a frontline NHS doctor, criticising the government's testing strategy?
Does the Secretary of State acknowledge that many frontline workers feel that the government's lack of testing has cost lives and is responsible for many families being unnecessarily torn apart in grief?
Secretary of State.
No, I don't, Mr. Speaker. I think that I welcome the Honourable Lady to her post as part of the Shadow Health Team. I think she might do well to take a leaf out of the Shadow Secretary of State's book in terms of tone. I'm afraid what she said is not true.
He got very testy.
And it's also incredibly patronising to her as well. It sounded very, very sexist, particularly on the day when the death count was horrible. The figures were absolutely terrible. So I think a bit of humility wouldn't go amiss from Matt Hancock right now.
It was very headmasterly, wasn't it? It was all, look, we don't like your tone, and you'd be much better if you adopted the tone of Jenkins here. Now, he's a good lad. We like him. Can you behave like him? It was just really dismal. Another member of the government, Grant Shapps, actually said that it was true. that had they tested earlier, it would have been much better. So it's no good saying, I don't like your tone, it's not true, when your colleague says, yeah, all right, it might be true. But I don't know, a bit of humility all round, probably.
Which member of the government's frontline team has been declared an icon of the current crisis by the chief curator of the National Portrait Gallery?
Oh, is it Whitty?
It's Whitty, Chief Medical Officer Professor Chris Whitty. A variety of artists have been inspired by the pasty-faced panjandrum and his slightly psychotic eyes. Would you like to see some of the artwork?
Oh, yeah.
Bit harsh.
Yeah, come on. Here's a rather nice sculpture by Cornish artist Penny Lally.
Ooh.
And then this rather alarming face by artist Wilfred Wood.
Oh! Oh!
Yeah, it's rather evocative of 10 Rillington Place, that last one. But who won't Chris Whitty be able to chat to in SAGE meetings from now on?
Elvis Presley.
Yes, you're right. He's no longer attending them.
He's left the building.
Neil Ferguson.
Yes. What did he do?
He had a lady caller.
This is a first-rate tabloid story of the type that the crisis hasn't had at all. It's been incredibly boring to date with graphs and figures. And now, at last, there's a sex scandal in the middle, so everyone is absolutely thrilled. And the man they called Professor Lockdown has now become Professor Trousers Down, which really is a way to make the whole of Fleet Street happy. And not even, I mean, I blame the tabloids. It was by the Telegraph. Bit of a shock, isn't it, Ayesha?
I mean, who would have thought that a Boris Johnson supporting paper might want to distract with a front page when we've got the worst death count in Europe? Who would imagine? In a way, this sort of sex scandal, it's so on brand for a Boris Johnson government. It's just like so perfect. And I bet the Prime Minister is breathing a sigh of relief thinking, God, thank God I'm not the one involved in a scandal involving like my groin. Like he's probably just going, thank God it's not me this time.
The funny thing about this story is literally... on the days he is telling people to stay at home, he is getting a visit from his married lover. He's telling people to social distance and yet not doing it himself to a woman who has 2 children and she's got a husband, and it just couldn't be more opposite. So now he's stepped back. I mean,
Are we sure that they didn't maintain social distancing? Perhaps they communicated through the letterbox.
Professor Neil Ferguson broke his own rules on lockdown to share a tryst with his 38-year-old married lover, Antonia Stats. He does love stats.
She said on a podcast before this all came out, she said, the problem with lockdown is it's a real challenge to the relationship between my husband and I, but not quite in the way that he thought.
And the BBC's main 10 o'clock news bulletin announced a significant casualty of the coronavirus this week. What was that?
I think it's Love Island, isn't it?
Exactly.
So Love Island isn't going to go ahead this year, but I believe that if you hold your head close to the microwave, you can still burn through the same amount of brain cells.
So this is the news that the government are going to begin virus contact tracing. There are some fears that the contact tracing app could help the government to harvest our personal data. Doesn't bother me, said Eamon Holmes from the safety of his recently constructed tinfoil bungalow. On Sunday, Boris Johnson is expected to lay out a menu of options, and that could be the last menu you see until 2021. According to reports in the papers, Boris was going to be accompanied at his Sunday broadcast by Michael Gove, but they were worried that people would think, fuck me, Wilf's an ugly baby. Paul and Chris, here's yours.
Okay, so Chris, what they're showing us is a tiger in the wild looking around. I think he's in the wild, and he's walking through, and there's some armed police, very heavily armed police, running towards the tiger. There was a story about a tiger that was discovered in Kent the weekend, and so the police were called by a startled onlooker, and they rushed to the scene to find that the tiger was actually a sculpture created by a woman who says it's been there for about 20 years. So everybody had a good laugh, and they took a photograph of it, and everything was all right.
Somebody saw it, obviously thought it was a real tiger, and reported it. And I think it was the same person that reported that outside the chemist, local residents were forcing money into the head of a guide dog.
I was just going to say my cat was fantastically put out. some other famous cat in Kent hogging the news for a week. He had a hissy fit and retired to his bed hurt. So that's the last we'll hear of him. Oh, he's gone again.
Do you know in Kent, though, you're more likely to be run over by a tiger driving a white van than you are to be eaten by a tiger in a field?
So there's quite a few wildlife parks in Kent, so there's like the population of tigers in Kent is probably higher than you might imagine.
There he goes again, undoing jokes with facts.
I feel as if it's a service I can provide.
Shall we have a look at the reason that 10 armed police officers in a helicopter were dispatched to the Kent countryside? Here it is. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
It's good, but it's no Chris Whitty. Here's the tiger with some of his new friends.
Well, the tiger's clearly sunbathing, isn't he?
Wouldn't it be funny if while they were having their photo taken, a real tiger came out from a bush and ate them all?
It's interesting you say that, Chris, because actually there are quite a number of wildlife parks in Kent, and it's more tigers than you might imagine.
Do you know what? I've heard that before. It's
Yeah, so have I. I don't know where I've heard it from, but somewhere.
Bloody BBC repeat.
Exactly.
Do we have any idea how the tiger got there?
No, I think there's a woman, she's a sculptor, she sculpted it. She said it's been there 20 years. So I imagine that somebody went for a walk near their house where they hadn't been before, and they came across it, and there it was. But it's not a surprise, really, because I don't know if you know this, but it's actually there's a surprising number of tigers in Kent because there's a number of wildlife parks.
I think I'm getting a bit of echo on my earpiece.
That's margarine for you.
It is the work of sculptress Juliet Simpson, now 85, who put it in woodland near her home 20 years ago. It's made of chicken wire and is now, according to Miss Simpson, rather dilapidated. She said the officers had a good laugh when she took them to the sculpture, and having had a good laugh, they then arrested her for being over 70 and outside. What does Nigel Farage think the police wasted their time doing this week?
This is Nigel Farage drove 100 miles to make a video about migrants, which is a little bit weird considering he spent the last God knows how long telling us that migrants are bloody everywhere. He could have just gone to the end of his road.
You're absolutely right. He complained on Twitter that the police had called at his house in an example of lockdown lunacy. Let's have a look at his tweet. 2 police officers just knocked on my door to advise me on essential travel. They had received a complaint that I'd been to Dover to report on the illegal migrant scandal taking place. What a total waste of time and money.
Poor Nigel, it's terrible when people try to restrict your freedom of movement, isn't it? It's awful.
He said he was a key worker and that it was vital for listeners of LBC, where I believe he has a radio show, that he went down there and made an investigative piece.
I mean, the one thing you can't say about Nigel Farage is that he's lazy. He does put a shift in when it comes to his hatred of immigrants. He will stop at nothing to get that message through.
Mr Farage was out again during the week, but this time just to the end of his drive to clap for carers, or as he now puts it, bang a ladle for the low-skilled. Let's have a look at Nigel's energetic homage to key workers.
That sounds very similar to the beginning of the music to Test Match Special on the radio.
Let's have another listen.
Yeah, there we are.
Yes, this is the police overreaction to a sculpture of a tiger. The police roamed the area, screaming at residents to get back in their houses before hearing a tiger was on the loose. Here's the model tiger. Juliet Simpson, who made the tiger, said, "Some people may have had a moment of thinking, it's a real tiger." No disrespect, but even Chris wouldn't think that was a real tiger. So time now for round 2. I'm going to play you an audio clue to a story. I want you to buzz in when you know what it is. Have you all got your buzzers ready? What have you got?
I've got a tambourine.
We're themed. I have maracas.
Paul, what have you got?
I've got a cute little penguin here whose name is Barry Wilson. And I'll tell you what he does. So if I say, I know the answer to this one.
Oh, perfect. Chris, what are you enjoying?
I've got a little sound effects machine of my daughter's, which I've got a choice of 16, but I've decided to go with a little bit of a wolf whistle, because I'm sure that in HD we're all looking fantastic without any TV makeup on. But I also do have the opportunity to do, which we could have done with from the start, really, couldn't we?
Here comes your audio clue.
Hey, look at size of that.
Oh, Chris!
I think this is the story about the guy in York who found a massive oven chip in his bag of frozen chips. Is that right?
It's absolutely correct. Yes, well done. This is the news that a man in York has got a massive chip. And for once, it's not the North-South divide. This week, Oliver Dale found the giant potato offering in his bag of frozen oven chips. Here it is. Oliver told the York Press, "With lockdown well and truly in full flow, you can forgive me for getting excited about the smallest things." Is it the biggest or the smallest? Make your mind up, Oliver, for God's sake.
It was 7 inches, which a lot of men have told me in the past is really huge. It just makes me think, if it was 7 inches when it was frozen, imagine how big it was when it thawed out.
I think it would reduce in size, wouldn't it? I mean, I hate to be the Paul Merton on this joke, but I think freezing something expands it and then thawing out reduces it. So,
well, I think you've killed that beautifully.
According to the York Press, Oliver then compared the chip to his head and a banana, which it was longer than. And how has the frozen chip industry reacted to this discovery?
They threw a spontaneous party. They all got drunk on whiskey and slept with each other in a hotel in Ayesha.
Well, McCain's director of marketing, Mark Hodge, told The Sun, "Wow, that is a big chip." What did head of the Belgian Potato Marketing Board and friend of the show, Romain Cools, have to say about the big chip?
Can I just say it's typical of the BBC to introduce a European called Remain. They just never stop with this agenda. It goes on and on and on. It's pathetic.
Romain said, "This is, indeed, a very long chip." Yes, this is the story that a man in York found a giant chip...
It's not a story, David.
Well, this is the passing diversion that a man in York found a giant chip in his bag of frozen crinkle cut. The 7-inch
we
chip
can't pretend
is...
that chips in newspapers is a new thing. That's been going on for years.
Oliver Dale told the press he was cooking the family dinner of chicken and chips and salad. But presumably the and salad was added when he realised his wife was listening. Fingers on buzzers again, teams. Here is your next audio clue. Ayesha. What have you got?
It's the story about a woman that was doing some gardening and then she discovered a World War II bomb in her garden.
Is the correct answer, yes. Lulu Cirillo from Dorset this week discovered an unexploded World War II bomb in her garden. She was doing some digging when she came across this.
We haven't got any way of deciding how big that is because there's nothing to scale. Can we put a picture of the chip next to it so that we can tell?
What was the first thing Lulu did when she found the bomb?
She threw it across the garden, which is one way to get a new swimming pool.
She did, for her, because she thought her pet Shih Tzu might want to play with it. She then later took it into her kitchen and tried to clean it with a knife and scrubber. Chris, do you know how she discovered it was actually a bomb?
She put photographs on Facebook asking people if she knew what this shiny German rock was. Somebody replied that it was a bomb. And so as the Facebook etiquette goes, she liked the comment first and then she shit her pants.
I like that she decided to clean it up, but she should have used some Sillet Bang. That might have been more appropriate.
Eventually, the army turned up and disposed of the bomb on a nearby beach.
Yes.
Here's the dramatic moment when the explosive device was dealt with. That's one way to keep people off the beaches. Yes, this is a woman called Lulu Cirillo who scrubbed a bomb with a Brillo. Hang on. We can only assume it didn't go boom or she'd be lying on a hospital pillow. Ha-ho.
Well, David, did you think your career would ever end up like this?
No, David's career, bringing retired doctors back to the front line. I think it's absolutely extraordinary.
Time now for the Missing Words round, which this week features as its guest publication the newsletter of the Society for Medieval Archaeology, which takes a fascinating look at a time when the world was very different to now. January. We start with Dr. Audrey Meany generously grants the Archaeological Society permission to what?
Take the piss out of her name.
Good answer.
Is it to exhibit her recent finds on a dig at Knossos?
To dig from home.
Dr. Audrey Meany generously grants the Archaeological Society permission to feature her 1964 writing on early Anglo-Saxon settlements.
It's obvious when you say it.
This is Dr. Audrey Meany, who generously donated her research, while, ironically, Dr. Keith Lovely told them to piss off. Next, man hit in the face 43 times with a wet sponge. What?
Wins clean face competition.
Raises millions for NHS charities.
Wonders why he didn't duck.
Man hit in the face 43 times with a wet sponge. Breaks world record. This is David Rush from Idaho, who this week broke the world record for most wet sponges to the face. Let's have a look at him.
3, 2, 1, go.
That seems a world record that anyone could eat. I could beat 43. In fact, on this very programme next week, I'm willing to take the challenge.
I'll throw the sponges.
You'll have to throw them a long way. We both live in Kent, Ian, but you couldn't possibly know how many tigers there are between me and you.
I thought it was like watching football. It was a man just hitting an object with his head repeatedly and a bit of slow motion.
And no possibility of head injuries through heading the sponge, so you're absolutely fine. It'd be a much safer game. And, you know, if you're playing football with a sponge, if you get injured, the trainer comes on and rubs a football on the back of your head.
And finally, another day, another what in York?
Another day, another dig in York. Another day, another discovery from the medieval period in York.
Massive chip. Is it another one of
Yeah,
them?
massive chip.
Well done, Chris. That's the correct
Is that
answer.
right?
Another day, another huge chip found by man in York. And here it is.
Blimey. The size of a block of flats.
It's just endless fake news. This chip's even less interesting than the last ones. You wouldn't even register it. It's just a chip.
Stop talking down our media, Ian.
So the final scores are Ian and Ayesha have 5, but the winners with 6 points, it's Paul and Chris.
Yes.
Oh, well done, Chris.
Well done.
On which note, we say thank you to our panellists Ian Hislop and Ayesha Hazarika, Paul Merton and Chris McCausland, and I leave you with the news that out for a walk in the park, Theresa May reveals a surprisingly mean streak as she squirts orange juice into a dog's eyes. In Norway, one backpacker marooned by the pandemic wonders how much longer it'll be before they get home. And Somerset Council found the perfect way to encourage dogs to use designated toilet areas. Good night.
Have I Got News for You will be back next Friday at 9, and more headline-wrecking humour when the self-isolated Nish Kumar and crew deliver the MASH report tomorrow night at 10 over on BBC Two. But next, more cheekiness with Mrs Brown's Boys.
Hello, Romesh here. Now, for obvious reasons, the Ranga Nation's